We'll do that. Microphone. There we go. All right. Well, thank you for joining us on the Scabbard. Little audio issues. I had to move my laptop this week, so getting everything hooked back up is always a bit of an adventure with getting everything programmed to play as it goes. Yo, James Miller, thanks for joining us tonight. Appreciate it. Really appreciate. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in chat, and I'll be able to happy to answer them as we go along. But yeah, so let's talk about the Carolina Hurricanes. It was a disappointing 3-2 loss. Um, Happy that we got the point. We've had struggles against the Carolina Hurricanes last 8 or 9 games now. We're without a win. We gotten 2 overtime points out of those 9 games. So that we got a point is a little bit of progress. Carolina is one of those teams that a lot of pundits like to say is a team that's going to compete for the Stanley Cup. They've fallen short the last few years. They get to maybe the second round and don't progress further. So I'm not I'm not sold on the Carolina Hurricanes, but they do have a tremendous amount of talent on that team. Um, but in that game, let's talk about some of the issues that I saw. So, our stat of the night is the fact that we only had 21 shots on net. You're not going to win a hockey game just getting 21 shots. 21 others were blocked or missed the net. So 42 total shots taken during the game. Again, it's still not a high. Remember, we got like 41 shots on goal against Toronto, got 6 goals. We 21 shots got through uh, to Antti Ranta. He let 2 in. I think if you boost that shooting percentage, at least the number of shots taken, I think you can get a few of them past the blockers, the defensemen and the forwards. Then you're gonna end up with a few more goals going into the net. To me, I think it was disappointing that we didn't get as many shots. For some of the game was really interesting because we had periods of good control versus periods where Carolina really cycled that puck down low. And let's talk about some of the other issues that we saw. So I think what the game boiled down to is that we couldn't capitalize on early chances. We had control of the game early on. Had a good cycle game. Um, Caused the Carolina Hurricanes to take a couple of penalties. We had a decent power play on the first power play run, didn't score. The second power play was absolutely awful. For some reason, they continued to skate right into the trap, and Carolina just outworked us. Didn't try and do any dumping and chasing or anything like that. So it was kind of disappointing that second power play, and I think that ended up giving Carolina some momentum. Buffalo takes the penalty, and then Tony DeAngelo scores on a goal, or scores on a long shot from the point that tips off of Henry Jokiharju's glove. Now, speaking of Jokiharju, I think he had a rough game, really bad game, primarily with puck management. He did block a few shots. Of course, one of those did go in. That happens. But it seemed like every time the Sabres got hemmed into their own zone, it was Henry Jokiharju that was the guy on the ice that was turning the puck over, facing the wall, letting the Carolina forecheckers get on top of him, and really, I think it hindered Owen Power's play as well, and that pairing was rather ineffective on during the game. I think as the game went on, you saw that Henry Jokiharju had the second lowest amount of ice time, ahead of Eric Johnson, who was only getting like 8 minutes, and most of that was on the shorthanded situations. But by the end of the night, Connor Clifton was paired with Owen Power. So that begs the question as we go forward in the season, that if we continue to see this play, and I haven't been really pleased with Jokiharju's play this season. When we get Matthias Samuelsson back, and if Ryan Johnson continues to play, I mean, he had a really decent game against the Carolina Hurricanes. He didn't let the moment get too big for him, and that's two big teams that if you're not ready to play in the NHL, it's very easy to let that moment get ahead of you. Um, and against the Leafs and against the Carolina Hurricanes, Ryan Johnson's played really, really well. So if he continues to play well, my thoughts are when Matthias Samuelsson comes back, we could see power, Darlene Samuelson on the first pairing, Ryan Johnson slot in where Henry Jokiharju is with Owen Power, and then Johnson and Clifton on the third pair. Um, but I mean, that's incumbent upon Ryan Johnson continuing to develop. But early results are good with Ryan Johnson. Um, there were not enough shots. I mentioned that in the stat of the night. Only 21 shots, 21 others taken and blocked that were blocked or missed. Need to get that up to around 60 in a game, whether they're blocked or missed or get through the net. More that get through the net, the better, of course. They did have good responses. Carolina gets the goal from Tony DeAngelo, and after all the work that they did in that early on in the first period, I thought that could have been a backbreaker goal for the Sabres. It did take them until a scramble play out front, Alex Tuck tying the game to get level. But then when Carolina took the lead in the third period, we responded as well again. Darlene on the power play, miracle on the power play. Getting the goal. It really wasn't on the run of play as far as getting in the zone and possessing the puck and shooting the puck. And it was on the rush that Darlene sniped a nice shot past Ranta. So we move on with the tired trio in overtime. You had Tuck, Middlestat, and Owen Power out. They actually had really good puck possession in the first part of that overtime, but gave up the puck and weren't able to change. And Carolina was able to get a change out on the ice, and then was able to cycle that puck and eventually fed Marty Necas down low for a tip-in goal, and the Carolina Hurricanes get that 3-2 win. So Buffalo now 6-1 on the season. Their second time into overtime, first time not winning in overtime, so getting a loser point. Again, stack points early in the season. I'm not going to be too upset about the loss. It was a good team, but we had our chances to win that game. So that brings us to tonight's game, which is the Minnesota Wild. So they're 5-6-2 on the season, sixth place in the Central Division, coming off a 4-1 loss against the Rangers last night. Louis Domingue, kind of a star of the playoffs a couple seasons ago when he came in for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and was kind of a third string afterthought for the Penguins franchise. Same thing, third string afterthought for the New York Rangers, and Shesterkin and Jonathan Quick were not available, so Louis Domingue comes up, gets the start, and gets a 4-1 victory over the Minnesota Wild. Minnesota's had a strange season. They lost 4 in a row, followed that up with a couple wins in a row before losing last night. So they've won 2 of the last 3 after losing 4 in a row. Joel Eriksson Ek. Let's see. Let me move this logo, because sometimes I can't see the question. All right, Joe Kirby on the second pair of this week league on the team. I agree. I think, honestly, I really do think that if Johnson continues to trend in that way, that Jokiharju is going to be probably getting some press box time. I don't know that he makes sense being paired with Erik Johnson. I'm okay with the Clifton Johnson pairing at this point, especially as Clifton gets acclimated to the team. But once Samuelson comes back, and if Johnson's still playing, Ryan Johnson's still playing well, it's going to get difficult with having 2 Johnsons on the team. I don't know yet. We'll see. They've kept him on the left with Darlene and Erik Johnson the first night. So, well, he was kind of cycled in and out of the lineup for cycled with the 7D pairing. So he was up and down the lineup. But I don't know. Maybe they want to keep him on his left side, a stronger side. to start his career, and then see about flipping him back and forth because some defensemen prefer playing on their strong side, some prefer playing on their weak side. So you know what? Yeah, I mean it's well. Let's just say if we get down to where Ryan Johnson goes to that second pair, then we've got a Power Johnson duo. So I mean, the jokes just write themselves. Uh, but yeah, I mean, you can make the two Johnson joke, or call it Johnson and Johnson, the baby powder pairing, or whatever. So yeah, I get you, man. Good to see you, Dan. Thanks for chiming in tonight. But yeah, so Minnesota is kind of a wishy-washy team. They've had kind of like Buffalo. They've had a middling season so far, trying to find their way. They've had a little bit of success last few games, but last night was a tough one. But good news for the Minnesota Wild is that they're getting some help back, and Jared Spurgeon is reportedly returning to the lineup. And that brings us to the lineups for tonight's game. Wild's projected lineups are based on last night's game, and they were put on daily face-off. We hadn't seen anything except for the update to the defensive pairings for the Wild from the. They're scoring well, but they're also allowing a lot of goals, especially their backup goaltender. We'll get into him in a moment. But Kirill Kaprizov, Matt Boldy, and Marco Rossi. Um, this is interesting because during the draft where Matthew Savoy was drafted, a lot of people heard Matt. They were teammates. They wanted Matt Boldy, and ended up getting Matt Savoy. Matt Savoy was straight taken ahead of Boldy. Boldy was the 10th pick taken in that draft. And people were mad, but Savoy's really, really turned out quite well. Um, but yeah, so that'll be another layer to this game. Former Sabre alert. So remember, former Sabre alert means that former Sabres have a propensity to score against us. So Ryan Johansson is there as well. We've got actually three former Sabre alerts on this team. Ryan Hartman, Max Zuccarello on that second line. Former Sabre Marcus Foligno with Joel Eriksson Ek and Pat Maroon. And then, Eriksson Ek is having a pretty good season so far. So leading the team in points and assists, I believe. And then Duhaime, Dewar, and Lettieri on that fourth pair. Not really familiar with any of those players. I think Lettieri is a former high overall draft pick. While projected pairings, Brodin and Faber on the first, Jonas Brodin and Brock Faber on that first pairing. Kenneth Middleton, I think, and Jared Spurgeon drawing in for his first game of the season. 33-year-old defenseman has been on IR with an upper body injury all year. So he draws in for his first game. They sent down Hunt, I believe is the defenseman they sent down to their affiliate in Iowa to make that move. And then Mermis, I've never heard of this guy before, but to be honest, I haven't watched a whole lot of Minnesota hockey lately. So, but paired with Zach Bogosian, who was just acquired in a trade a couple days ago. So Zach Bogosian goes to Minnesota, and he is on that third pairing, bolstering. They've got a lot of injuries on that back end, so that's why you see Bogosian coming in. Gives them, a pretty physical presence. There are a lot of people who still complain about Bogosian from his days in Buffalo, but then he goes to Tampa and wins a couple Stanley Cups. He's not the 25-minute workhorse that you have on your team, which I think Buffalo thought he was supposed to be when he came to us. Zach is a good defenseman, but probably he's not a guy that needs to log 25 minutes a night, as we saw here in Buffalo. So, but getting third pair minutes in Minnesota as he winds down his career. So again, former Sabre alert. Good chance he'll score on us the way that Buffalo goes. Our Wild goalies tonight. Last week, I think Fleury started last night. Marc-Andre Fleury, the Flower. 4 goals allowed. So Jonas Gustafsson is the Sabres on the money line. Dan, if you can tell me what the because I usually do this, but I forgot to grab the odds from DraftKings on the over under and the who's favored. Um, so over under for the game is 6.5 goals. That's a usual number for Buffalo Sabres games. Are Sabres getting a goal, goal and a half? That's what I'm expecting. Um, But yeah, so Gustafson, who's been the weaker of the two goaltenders for the Minnesota Wild, struggled mightily this season. Yep. So the Sabres are minus 1.5. So you got to hope the Sabres win by 2, and hope if you're going to take the over, hope that the game total is more than 7 goals. So that is what the lines are. Let's talk about the. Oops. Oh, I went up too far. There we go. Our scratches for tonight are Shaw, Goligoski, and Goudreau, all on injured reserve, although Goudreau is day to day and close to returning. He might return for this game as a last minute addition, but Freddie Goudreau is a banger. So if he's in the lineup, that's going to be tough for the Sabres. Sabres have a little bit of change in their lineup that's played against the Carolina Hurricanes. First line is Jeff Skinner, Tage Thompson, and making his NHL debut, Matthew Savoy, ninth overall pick in the 2022 NHL draft. Played out of Winnipeg in the Western Hockey League. Although he had kind of a winding path to the NHL. So, but Greenway, Middlestat, Paterka, same as that Carolina game that as the second line. Olis and Krebs with Dylan Cousins, who draws back into the lineup, and Zemgus Girgensson, Tyson Yost, and Kyle Okposo on the fourth line, the normal fourth line. Cousins replaces Alex Tuck, who is day to day. He's been nursing some injuries, but and was he was on the ice for the third overtime goal, but that really wasn't a contributing factor to him being out tonight. It's just that he's had a nagging injury that they're trying to give him some time off. And then they play Pittsburgh tomorrow night, so I'm not sure if he'll be in the lineup for that one. But so Cousins draws in. Tuck is out. Our defensive pairings, no change from Carolina. Darlene with Ryan Johnson, Owen Power, Henry Jokiharju, Connor Clifton, and Eric Johnson on the third pairing. Our goaltender tonight is Devin Levi coming back in. Luukkonen played a solid game against Carolina. I'm not putting anything that happened in that game. People may look at the save percentage on that one, but I thought Buffalo blocked a ton of shots, but I thought when needed to be, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen was very stout in that Carolina Hurricane game. So. It's starting to emerge, and we got word that Eric Comrie is starting to skate again. He was sharing practice ice yesterday with Luukkonen. Levi had his own net in practice because he was the starter, but we'll see. Oh, what I got? Odds change last second. Buffalo Sabres minus 118. That's on the money line, I'm guessing. So bet $5, it pays out $4.23. That's an addition. So, like, if you bet $5, you get $9.23, or is that? Because it doesn't make sense to bet something and lose money on it. I'm still very confused about gambling. I suck at it. So, yeah. All right, that makes sense. Okay, so all right. The injury report, as I mentioned, Alex Tuck joins the wounded with a minor UBI, upper body injury, not urinary body injury or something like that. But he's been nursing that last few weeks. Give him another night off. Hopefully things start to heal up for him. Status for tomorrow night's game is not known. So that brings us to our scratches. Tonight, scoring for the Buffalo Sabres, so I'm betting on anybody. I think it's going to be somebody like You can never go wrong with putting it on Thompson, Tage Thompson. Uh, but JJ Paterka, that's a guy that I think is really kind of having his moment, his breakout moment this season. So JJ Paterka, JJ is dynamite, as I say. So, but our scratches tonight, Bryson is healthy. Savoy is healthy. Well, I'm sorry, take Savoy off. That was from last game, but Byro is still in the IR. Comrie is getting close. Cousins, yeah, this is from last time. I should have changed this, but Cousins is back in. Jack Quinn, long-term IR, and back Benson on the IR, wink, wink, and Samuelson still day-to-day, getting closer. So, um, and then we got tonight's odds. So our player profile tonight is Matthew Savoy making his season and NHL debut. Very excited to see this. So Matthew Savoy, January 1st, 2004 birthday. Man, that makes me feel really old. So he doesn't turn 20 until January 1st, but to me, even just seeing somebody who's 20 years old that was born in 2000, in the 2000s, makes me feel incredibly old. I was 31 years old. Well, no, not quite. I was 30 years old when he was born. Um, but yeah, born in St. Albans, or I'm sorry, St. Albert, Alberta, which makes sense. St. Albert. Uh, he's 5'9", 179 pounds. Plays center. Also plays on the wing, and he's playing on the wing tonight. Um, Hopefully, he can develop as a center because Lord knows the Sabres need help down the middle as far as face-offs. They need a good face-off guy. As I mentioned, ninth overall pick in 2022. He had a little bit of a winding road to the NHL. He was, one of these guys that was affected by COVID. So he started out with Winnipeg Ice in 2019, 2020. Played 22 games, had 7 points. Pretty good start for a young guy. And then everything went to hell with the season. Um, Everything was canceled. The next season was canceled. So he went and played for the Sherwood Park Crusaders in the Alberta Junior Hockey League before moving to the USHL to play for the Dubuque Fighting Saints, where he had 38 points in 34 games. With the pandemic easing, he returned to Winnipeg, had a great draft year, scoring 90 points in 65 games. 35 goals, 55 assists. He played really well, had 12 points in 12 playoff games that season. Gets drafted by Buffalo. He tried to make a push to make the Sabres, or at least get that 9-game look, but the Sabres sent him back to Winnipeg. He had a little bit of a slow start coming out of camp last season, but really brought it on. 62 games, 38 goals, 57 assists, 95 points, 26 penalty minutes in that season, but really turned it on for the playoffs. 19 games, he had 11 goals, 18 assists for 29 points. So more than a point a game guy for the Winnipeg Ice in the playoffs. Way more than a point a game guy in the playoffs. Way more than a point a game guy in the regular season. Had 2 games with the Rochester Americans in the Calder Cup semifinals. Did not register a point, but did have a 5-game stint with the Rochester Americans, just recently completed as a conditioning stint. Had 2 goals, 3 assists for 5 points in that stretch. And, if I had my preferences, Savoy would be down in Rochester full time. Really getting used to the pro game. It's kind of an all or nothing for a guy who's under the age of 20, who played in Canadian juniors. They're locked into playing either the Canadian Junior League or the NHL, and I think there's, whereas the Canadian juniors actually have a exceptional talent exception for younger players moving up to the Canadian Junior Hockey Leagues. They don't have that for the AHL, and I think that would benefit the AHL and benefit, to a little bit of a detriment to Canadian junior hockey. But still, there's a ton of talent in Canadian junior hockey. They're not going to I think it hurts the development to send a guy that's uber talented but not quite ready for the full rigors of an NHL season to get them acquainted to AHL hockey. I think is a good step for them and enhances their abilities. But Matt Savoy is up in the lineup. He'll get his 9 games. We'll make the determination at that point. I would love to see him and Benson get a couple games together. Benson's got 2 more games left as a great odds on the JJ bet for $5 wins 25. So yeah, hopefully you win on that one, Dan. But yeah, Savoy's. I'm anticipating a couple games with him and Benson on the ice together. This will get us closer to December, and when December starts, we start talking about the World Junior Championships. In fact, some of our prospects are in tournaments, getting ready for the World Junior Championships. I just saw some stuff from Chris Baker on Sabres prospects about Noah Oslin and I can't remember the other guy's name, but playing for Team Sweden in a nations tournament, getting a few goals for Sweden. So more prospects in this pipeline I'm very excited about. Yeah, so keys to the game tonight. Don't sleep on that second line. So second line for the Minnesota Wild is Johansson, Hartman, and Zuccarello. Again, it's a Sabres alert, a former Sabre alert with Marcus Johansson. Don't sleep on that line. That first line's great. We know that first line's great. And the third line's really good too, with Eriksson Ek actually leading the team in points. So don't sleep on this team. They may have a lesser record than the Sabres, but when you're a young team fighting for first playoffs in several years, you have to really take every team seriously. Take every team like they're ahead of you in the standings and try and beat the hell out of them. So, second thing would be let's get the power play healthy, because they're the Minnesota Wild's PK is the worst in the league. Ranked 32nd in the league. I want to say they're in the 60s, 60% with their PK, and then a consistent offensive effort. I was looking at some of the stats. Sabres are phenomenal in the second period. They get most of their shots. They get most of their goals. Well, their goals are pretty evenly spread, but their offensive game in the second period is really well, but they fall off in the first and the third period. So consistency as far as getting more shots in the first period and the third period. Don't ease into games, because that allows your opponent to ease into games. Play a house of fire on these guys. So that's what I'm looking for. So on this date in Sabres history, November 10th, 2010, Lindy Ruff becomes the 18th head coach in NHL history to get to 1,000 games. Of course, at that point, all 1,000 games were with the Buffalo Sabres. He has eventually gone on to coach in Dallas and New Jersey, and still coaching well. He's got that New Jersey team playing really well. So kind of miss Lindy Ruff, but then when he was let go, it was a time for that to happen. So let's take a look at the farm. Rochester is 6-2-2 on the season. They haven't played since our last broadcast. Leading the AHL North, they are taking on Syracuse tonight, or not Syracuse, Utica tonight, and I think they play them in Utica tomorrow. And Jacksonville, the Icemen are 4-2-1 in third in the Eastern Conference South Division at the ECHL. They had a 5-2 win over Savannah on Wednesday after our last broadcast. Michael Hauser, former Sabre, played towards the end of that really just awful COVID shortened season, but played well. Is in Jacksonville playing for the Icemen, had 25 of 27 shots saved to get that 5-2 victory over Savannah. So that is it for the show. I appreciate Daniel and who else? We had somebody else comment. James Miller. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, dropping your comments in the chat. I really appreciate it. Make it a habit. Come on out here and talk Sabres hockey with me. We are broadcasting tomorrow night at 6:30, hour before our game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Be there, be square, or be round if you want to, like me. Thanks, James. I really appreciate it. And we will talk to everybody. Let me get the screen up here. Talk to everybody next game tomorrow night. Have a good one.